Greetings and salutations, guys. I'm going to review Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire, which I'm told I'm not supposed to say the X. It's supposed to be silent. But I don't know. X is a cool letter. I like saying it, so I just did. This is the fifth movie in the MonsterVerse franchise, which actually expanded quite a bit last year because there were two different TV series that launched connected to it. But still, it's been a decade, and this has been a sort of slow and steady series. And here, of course, we get a direct follow-up to Godzilla vs. Kong from 3 years ago. And it picks up with some of the characters, but, this has been a series that's never been big on the human characters, and then I think that continues mostly here. Rebecca Hall is back, and Brian Tyree Henry is back, and Kaylee Hoddle is back, but a lot of the other characters just kind of vanish. It's funny, the first scene that Brian Tyree Henry and Rebecca Hall have, they talk about how, oh yeah, they met in the last movie, but they didn't actually meet. I mean, they were in the same vicinity, but we never saw them on camera meeting because their storylines were completely separate. But that's okay. It's been a few years. Kong is down in Hollow Earth doing his thing, master of Hollow Earth, and up on the surface, Godzilla is going around fighting titans. And it seems like everything's copacetic until Kong discovers something further in Hollow Earth. While we've got the Gia character, and she is starting to get these sort of, not premonitions, but she's feeling something. She's feeling something going on down in Hollow Earth, which brings her mom, Rebecca Hall's character Eileen, to journey there to find out what exactly is happening, what it is that's sort of disturbing things down there, while we're seeing that there are these new creatures that Kong has discovered that are up to no good and are going to cause some problems, and eventually just might involve needing the assistance of one Godzilla. First and foremost, the thing I want to say about this movie is what a great King Kong movie it is. If you, like me, are a fan of King Kong, I think this will be a very happy experience for you. I know the last movie, certainly Godzilla vs. Kong, I think kind of naturally more focused on Kong just because he is the underdog. I mean, he kind of lost that fight, right? He had to, because as big and huge as he is not the force of nature that Godzilla is. And also, he's just easier to make a character than Godzilla because Godzilla is a force of nature. So that continues here, but even more so because in the last movie, Kong and Gia certainly had a lot of great moments together, but this time Kong is off on his own for a lot of the movie, and we just follow Kong and we see what it's like for him, and then he's interacting with these other creatures and we're seeing what that's like. And I really have to commend everyone involved here as far as, the special effects and all these artists that work to really give this character so much soul, because I felt for this guy. Kong goes through it in this movie. He's looking a little older. He's got some physical ailments that are a big part of the movie. And you kind of feel for him, and you feel what he's going through, and you kind of really can invest in him as a character. And he's almost the main character. I'd argue he is the main character in the movie. As much as there's, we go back to the humans and they're sort of, helping you along, it's really Kong's story. As for what about Godzilla? Godzilla's awesome. I love Godzilla. He is, again, a very important presence in this movie. I think he was more so in the last one because he was a menace. He was like this very dangerous menace to Kong. And it was kind of like this big thing this as they're heading towards each other, and they had a couple big fights. Here we're seeing him, we're seeing what's going on with him, and we're seeing, of course, the power he has. I just think he's a little more kept to the side until he's not, and then wow, does he do big things. And you certainly get to once more be reminded of how cool Godzilla is. But it is ultimately a Kong movie, so if that's gonna really bother you guys, I'm sorry. Godzilla gets so many movies, guys. Kong doesn't get as many movies. Godzilla had a freaking amazing movie that won an Oscar just a few months ago. Let Kong be the lead in these films. It's okay. No one's forgetting about Godzilla. Godzilla got to be on Monarch a whole bunch. As for the human characters, I feel like, yes, it is a cliche to say, okay, the human stuff is kind of the weaker part. We're just kind of going to get through it. This might be the most extreme example of that. I really mostly felt for Rebecca Hall, who is such a fantastic actor. And please, if you haven't seen The Night House and if you haven't seen Resurrection, two movies in the past few years that she should have gotten Oscar nominations for, check those out and see and be reminded of how amazing she is. She is kind of given the thankless role here. She is just, because she's like the most smart expert of the bunch, she is given so much exposition. She is given so much, here's what's happening. Here's what Godzilla has to do. Here's what Kong has to do. And it's, yes, she got some emotional content as far as her bond with her daughter and what's happening there, but a lot of it is just very dry, very explaining the situation. Other two prominent people, except for Gia, who I actually think is once again got a lot of heart and soul to the film, are returning Brian Tyree Henry, has this sort of conspiracy theorist, Bernie, and new addition, Dan Stevens, as Trapper. I love Dan Stevens, and I'm a huge fan of the last time him and director Adam Wingard teamed up. In fact, I have a poster right here for that film, The Guest. It's like one of my favorite movies. So it's very fun to have him in here. And he gets to play this kind of very boisterous character. He gets a hell of an entrance. He gets an entrance that sort of says, this is a crazy cool guy in a big way. And he brings that Dan Stevens sort of charisma and likability to it. I will say at the beginning of the film, though, I thought, whoa, because his character comes in so big. He is kind of a veterinarian who specializes in titans and does, crazy things to kind of help these giant animals. And then you've got Bernie, Brian Tyree Henry, who's also a character who goes very big. That character is operating at a certain level. These are two excellent actors, but at the top of the movie, it was like, ooh, this is a little much, guys. Because Rebecca Hall's the straight person, the straight man here with these two guys that are just like operating at this huge level. Kind of calms down for Dan Stevens' character as it goes on. Trapper settles in a little more, and that's fine because Bernie can be the sort of bigger presence in the film. But ultimately, not about the humans, that's not what we're here for. So even though, yes, it's sort of something you can say is a criticism of the movie, that the humans in this one really kind of feel like they're just kind of there to drive, to give you the plot and move forward. It's ultimately okay because what happens with the creatures is so great. Once again, Adam Wingard returning from Godzilla vs. Kong, I thought he did such a great job there with spectacle and the actual fights and the visual flair he brought to it. And he does that again here. There are some really cool, great, just, crowd-pleasing monster fights in this movie. The final, I don't want to even say final fight because it's such a prolonged fight sequence that operates on multiple locations with multiple characters, but the whole sort of third act of the movie is really fun. And there's one particular part of it where the characters kind of have to deal with their environment changing around them and something happening. I'm trying to be vague here, as they can't really rely on things operating normal around them while they're still having to fight. And I thought it was so clever because you're dealing with giants, dealing with King Kong and Godzilla and the creatures they're fighting. I guess I can talk about the Scar King. He's been very prominent. Another giant ape who is sort of the lead creature villain. But then there's some other things going on in this movie, some other things around the corner that I don't want. I know some of them the spoilers are out there, but I won't say them. But they're all really fun, and how that all works and how all these elements clash together. Godzilla -1 was so acclaimed as being this sort of really wonderful, emotional story that took Godzilla, used sort of the metaphor of Godzilla, and did something very poignant and very impactful. But I'm one of those people who's like, Godzilla doesn't need to be just that. That was so wonderful, we got that. But we can also be reminded that Godzilla can be a part of a giant monster fighting monster movie, and that's awesome too. And the fact that we're getting these just a few months apart, and we had Monarch, the MonsterVerse series in the middle of that, where Godzilla kind of popped in and out, and I thought that was a really fun show. I think, hey, who is to complain if you love these characters that you're just getting a bunch of them in different iterations in different ways? Because yes, Godzilla x Kong is ultimately kind of just eye candy, but it's a very fun eye candy. And it's not just because, again, if you're into Kong as a character, and I think this movie will make some people who might not have thought they were into him more as a character. The special effects, I mean, for the most part, are very impressive and cool. There are some parts I don't think that are 100% photorealistic, but again, getting you to invest in Kong as a fully realized character, seeing the emotion and the sort of depth of his soul in his eyes, they really nail that here. I love that big guy. And so this and he doesn't get the solo movies, right? He got one in the whole MonsterVerse. Godzilla got two. So give him the spotlight here. This was really fun to see. So yeah, I definitely had fun with this. This is definitely a movie you see on the biggest screen possible. See it in IMAX if you can. It is made for that. You know, it is a popcorn movie ultimately. Nothing wrong with that when they deliver like this one is. So those are my thoughts on Godzilla, X Kong, whether you say the X or not, the new Empire. All right, guys, thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.